Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare, Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram,
Ram Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar, Radha Shyam Sundar Radhe.
Jaya Radha Shyam Sundar, Radha Shyam Sundar Radhe.
Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladev, Jaya Subhadra.
Jai Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra.
Jaya Gaur Nitai, Jaya Gaur Nitai, Gaur Nitai, Jaya Gaur Nitai.
Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai.
Jaya Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva.
Jaya Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Thank you so much, Satya Dwarkadesh Prabhu and Mataji. Wonderful Kirtan. Radhika, Raman Prabhu, I think you are there. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you so much for giving your valuable time to ISKCON of Central New Jersey. First time we very warmly welcome you. So I'll just give a quick introduction, Prabhu. And then you can get started. Is that okay? Thank you.
Yes.
His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu is a disciple of His Holiness Anumat Preksha Swami Maharaj, and is also known as legal name Dr. Ravi Gupta. He is a notable Vaishnava scholar and presently is a professor at in Utah. I don't know the exact university name. And then he's also a faculty at Bhaktivedanta College. He received his PhD from Oxford University on the topic of Jiva Goswami's Vedanta as a postdoctoral fellowship from Lancaster College. He grew up in Boise, Idaho, where his academic accomplishments were documented in the Idaho's Statesman. On April 17, 2008, he met with Pope Benedict and presented a gift to him on behalf of Hindu American community. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So, for giving your association. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for the very kind welcome, and really pleasure and an honor to be here with all the devotees in CNJ congregation. I think I know several of the devotees here, and others are I'm meeting for the first time. But as Prabhu said, it's I think it's my first time speaking on this forum. I'm not sure. But I have one small request. If those of you who can, if you wouldn't mind turning on your video, it really is, it's much more inspiring for me to be able to speak to faces rather than to just names. So those of you who can, please turn on your video screens, and I will appreciate that very much. So I think the topic today is Ram Katha. And so I chose a particular theme from Srimad Bhagavatam. and then we can get started with that. I'll begin with a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam and then discuss the theme. The theme of the class today is why does Lord Ram suffer? And how does he suffer? Or does he suffer, actually, is the real question. So this is the question I want to address. It's a question that's raised in Srimad Bhagavatam itself. And we'll begin with the verse. So, Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 11, called Lord Ramachandra Rules the World, text number 16. Okay, hopefully you can all see the verse on the screen. Tachrutva Bhagavan Ramo Rundhannapi Dhyashucha Smarangst-tasya gunangstangstan na shaknodrodhumishvara tachrutva bhagavan ramo rundhannapi dhiyashucha smarangst-tasya gunangstangstan na shaknodrodhumishvara tachrutva bhagavan ramo Rundhannapi dhiyashucha smarangst-tasya gunangstangstan na shaknodrodhumishvara. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. After hearing the news of Mother Sita's entering the earth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was certainly aggrieved. So this is at the end of the Ramayana story told in this chapter. After hearing the news of Mother Sita's entering the earth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was certainly aggrieved. Although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, upon remembering the exalted qualities of Mother Sita, he could not check his grief in transcendental love. Purport. Lord Ramachandra's grief at the news of Sita Devi's entering the earth is not to be considered material. In the spiritual world, also there are feelings of separation, but such feelings are considered spiritual bliss. Grief and separation exists even in the absolute, but such feelings of separation in the spiritual world are transcendently blissful. Such feelings are a sign of tasya prema vashyatva svabhava, being under the influence of Hladini Shakti and being controlled by love. In the material world, such feelings of separation are only a perverted reflection. So this question basically, well, let me start by saying this. The Ramayana is a sad story. It's a very sad story. In fact, anyone who has relished the Ramayana or heard it even a couple times knows that the moments of joy are few and far between. They're long stretches of grief, of sadness, of tragedy, punctuated by moments of joy and happiness. And just when you think things are going to get better, they become sad again, right? And so unlike the Leela of Lord Krishna, we know very little about Lord Ramachandra's childhood. It must have been very joyful and very happy and very playful, but we know very little bit, but not much. The first major incident we know of in the Ramayana is when Lord Ramachandra is leaving Ayodhya upon the request of Vishwamitra, right? And Dasharatha is already getting a taste of the heartbreak that he's going to experience in a much greater way later on in his life. So it really that's how the story's major events begin. And then the wedding of Lord Ramachandra and Mother Sita is possibly the high point of the story. It's really joyful, it's ecstatic, everyone is together, and it almost seems like things will be happily ever after at that point, right? But that joy is very short-lived, at least in what we know about that period. Very soon thereafter, Lord Ramachandra is exiled to the forest, and Mother Sita and Lakshman go as well. And there again, apparently they spend 13 years in happiness, peacefully. But then again, we know very little about those 13 years, isn't it? A few things here and there, but the real events we know is in the 14th year, when they enter the Dandaka forest, and Shurplaka comes and Karandushan come, and all of that takes place. Right away, again, the troubles begin. And the whole story is practically that 1 year. And just when Ravan is killed and you think things are going to get better, and Ram and Sita head back to Ayodhya, and Lord Ramachandra is coronated king of Ayodhya, and Mother Sita is queen, and you think now happily ever after. Well, apparently they spend some time happily, but again, we don't know much about that time. The next major event we know is Sita Devi is being banished to the forest. And soon after, then Lakshman also is sent off to the forest. And Lord Ramachandra, it says, he lives his life like a dead body, practically. He's lost all oomph and joy and happiness in his life without Mother Sita. He's constantly in a state of tears. So the great literary critics in ancient India, like Anandavardhana, have Abhinava Gupta, they have identified the most important rasa in the Ramayana, they say, is this feeling of shoka, or grief, or karunya it's called. Karunya means pity, the same as shoka in this context. A sense of pity, of grief, of sadness, as the dominant emotion in the Ramayana. And in fact, indeed, this is a question that is also present throughout Vaishnav literature, Vaishnav descriptions of the Ramayana, particularly Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. The question is, why is it that Lord Ramachandra, here in this verse we just read, Bhagavan Rama, he's called, Ishvara, he's the Supreme Lord, Ishvara means the controller. Why is it that he is suffering? Is he actually suffering? And if so, why? And how is this suffering come upon him? This question of the Lord's suffering is something that is raised multiple times in Srimad Bhagavatam. In this verse, it's there front and center. It says, although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan Rama, Ishvara, upon remembering the exalted qualities of Mother Sita, he could not check his grief. And in the 5th canto of Bhagavatam, there's this chapter called The Island of Jambudvipa, which describes the prayers of the residents of Jambudvip for the Lord. And there's beautiful prayers spoken by Hanumanji in Kim Purusha Varsha. Hanuman gives these prayers to Lord Ramachandra. If you haven't read these prayers, I recommend them highly. Very, very nice. So this is Canto 5, Chapter 19, and it's the first few verses. Really beautiful prayers, and Prabhupada's purports in that chapter are amazing. So actually the Lord Ramachandra's story is told a few times in Bhagavad. It's there in the first couple cantos with the descriptions of the scheduled incarnations. That's very short, 1 or 2 verses. And then you have it in the 5th canto, and then you have the fuller description in the 9th canto. But in this 5th canto, again, Hanumanji raises this question in his prayers. That how is it possible that the Supreme Lord, who is detached from everything, who is the supreme controller, who is beyond all suffering, how is it possible that he is suffering so much? So this is the question I want to raise and try to answer, to discuss with all of you. This question is it's actually, it's also a very intensively found in also Chaitanya Charitamrita, not just in Srimad Bhagavatam. But you know, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is on his tour of South India, then he comes to one village where he meets a Brahman, Ramdas Vipra. Ramdas because he's a servant of Lord Ramachandra. And this Brahmin is very, very attached to Lord Ram and Mother Sita. And he invites Mahaprabhu to his home to have prasad for lunch. But when Mahaprabhu gets there, the cooking has not even started. Right? Imagine inviting a very respected sannyasi to your home. They get there at the appointed time and you're still struggling to find the ingredients to cook. So this was his condition. He wasn't looking for ingredients. He was just sitting there in a state of grief. And Mahaprabhu asked him, he said, what is happening? And he said, well, I'm waiting that when Lakshman comes with the firewood, then Mother Sita is going to cook. And so Mahaprabhu heard this, he was immediately very happy. He was much more delicious to him than any prasadam was to see this Raganuga Bhakti of this Brahman. And so he was very happy, but he saw that the Brahman was not happy. And he said, what is the matter? Why are you crying? And he said, he actually finally cooked and he fed Mahaprabhu, but he refused to eat himself. And Mahaprabhu said, why are you not eating? He said, I cannot eat, my Lord. Somehow I cooked and I fed you, but I can't eat. Because I cannot stand the fact that Ravan could dare do such a thing and kidnap Mother Sita. How is this possible? It is so unfortunate. And he was so distressed to see Lord Ramachandra's condition and to think about Mother Sita's condition that he refused to take prasad. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he reassured him that a demon like Ravan can never touch Mother Sita. The only thing he can touch is her shadow. Stating a very important principle that is relevant for all of us. That when we try to enjoy Krishna's energy, when we try to enjoy Lakshmi in the form of wealth or opulence, without Lord Ram, without Vishnu, without service to Krishna, we try to enjoy it for ourselves, then all we get in return is not Lakshmi, but only Durga. Only Lakshmi Devi's shadow. And with her, with Durga, comes bondage, entanglement, and suffering in this world, just like Ravan. So Mahaprabhu explained this, but the Brahman was okay. He was somewhat controlled. But then Mahaprabhu went, he left that village and he journeyed to South India, to Rameshwaram, the southern tip of India. And there he found a copy of the Kurma Puran, which describes that before Ravan came to kidnap Mother Sita, the original Mother Sita was given to Agni for protection, and only the shadow Sita remained. And Mahaprabhu was so happy to see this. He took it says, the Chaitanya Charitamrita says that Mahaprabhu was so concerned to make sure that this Brahman believes him, that believes that this is actually coming from Shastra, this is authentic, that he took the original manuscript from the temple and had a copy made by a scribe and had the copy left there. This is very unusual because typically you would take a copy and leave the original in its source. But he got permission to take the original, just so the Brahmin could see that this was not some new thing, that some fake idea created by someone written recently. And Mahaprabhu took the effort to journey back to this Brahman's village. Think about this. I mean, this was in the days when People were walking on foot. Mahaprabhu was walking on foot. He took all the effort to go back to that Brahman's village, go back to his home, show him this manuscript to relieve the Brahman's suffering as a result of his feeling that the Lord suffered so much. So the entire account in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this account, is focused on this one question. How can the Lord suffer so much? How can Mother Sita suffer so much? Right? So this is an important concern in Vaishnava literature. You see it in Bhagavatam, in the prayers of Hanumanji. You see it in the 9th canto in Shukadev Goswami's description of Ramayana story. And you see it in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And you see Srila Prabhupada addressing this question all throughout his purports on the Ramayana in Bhagavatam. So, why does the Lord suffer? Srila Prabhupada, he actually provides wonderful answers to this question. And I say answers because he actually provides 3 different answers to this question on 3 different levels. It's very, very wonderful. Why does Lord Ramachandra suffer? The first reason is to set an example for the world for how we should be determined in the practice of our dharma, our duties. We have dharmas towards mother, father, husband, wife, children, boss. We have so many society, king, government. We have dharmas towards all of these different entities. And human life begins when we are able to practice dharma. Right? That is what makes us human. No one criticizes a dog for crossing a red light. Right? Not a problem, because we understand that dogs, they cannot practice dharma by free will. They practice their own version of dharma, which is basically involuntary. It's by instinct. But voluntary practice of dharma is what makes us human. This is the marker of human life. And Lord Ramachandra, in his example, he basically shows in his life that even when it becomes very difficult to practice dharma, we must do it still. Whether it means going into the forest for exile, or it means fighting an entire army of demons. And Prabhupada says in the purport, Canto 5, Chapter 19, Text 5, he explains that Lord Ramachandra is demonstrating how a husband has to protect his wife at whatever the cost. Even you have to search for a whole year and fight an army of demons and make a bridge across the ocean, you have to protect your wife, because this is the dharma of a husband. Right? So everyone is showing, Mother Sita, everyone is showing how to practice dharma, and most importantly, how to practice the dharma of a king. Srila Prabhupada says that Lord Ramachandra's appearance is basically, he says, to show what it means to be an ideal king. Prabhupada says that Krishna appears for many different reasons. He has many dharmas to demonstrate and how to go beyond dharma also. But Lord Ramachandra, Prabhupada says specifically, his entire story, his entire life history is focused around this central point. What is good leadership? How can we be a public servant? How can one be a king, an ideal king? The dharma of a king, Raja Dharma. This is the focus. Of course, he shows all other dharmas also. This is why he's Maryada Purusha. But Raja Dharma is the primary. So even when it's difficult, we have to do our dharma, right? So this is the first reason the Lord takes on so much trouble and suffering. And this is the moral of the Ramayana story for the average person. That you should do your dharma nicely, even when it's something difficult, right? So this is the lesson that the Ramayana teaches for the average person, for the average dharmic person. And in fact, if you see that this is the message that most people learn from the Ramayana. If you go to India or you go to other places, this is the primary message that is taught. But this is only the first level of the Ramayana's meaning. There is a second and a third as well. The second reason the Lord takes on this suffering is to show us the consequences of attachment in this world. That see, when we become attached in this world to anyone and anything, material attachment results in suffering. In fact, the amount of suffering we experience is going to be directly proportionate to the degree of attachment we have for material things, the degree of attachment we have to sense enjoyment. Of course, we know Lord Ramachandra was not a sense enjoyer. He was not a sense gratifier. He wasn't into these things. But he's showing by his example, he's teaching, he's playing the part of a human being. Right? This is his avatar, is that of a human being. And he's showing us that if you become attached, look at the trouble you have to go through. Your whole life is going to be covered with suffering. Right? And by being attached to kingdom or to wealth or to husband or wife or all of these things. And this message in particular is a message for those who are seeking liberation, mokshakami, those who want to become free of material entanglement. This message is for them. And this message is really something unique to Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, so many versions of the Ramayana you can read, but the Bhagavatam is uniquely describing this message loud and clear. The dharmic message is there in Bhagavatam, but it's not very loud. It's not very strong. The message that is repeated multiple times is this message, that everyone who wants to achieve liberation, take note. The Lord himself is demonstrating the consequences of attachment to sense gratification in this world. And the reason I say that this is a very loud and clear message, not only is it found explicitly in 9th canto by Shukadev Goswami, saying that this is what the Lord is teaching by his Leela, but it's also mentioned by Hanumanji in 5th canto, that the Lord is demonstrating the consequences of attachment. Now, this message is a difficult one to swallow, and it's not one that everyone, that is useful for everyone, depending on their level, right? It depends on their level. So for someone who's not prepared to think about renunciation, it can be very difficult. What are you saying? How are you? You're criticizing Lord Ram. No, this is not criticism. Lord Ram is teaching in one time, he's teaching multiple things, right? And depending on what level we are at, we can listen to that message. This is the second reason he takes suffering voluntarily, is to demonstrate to us the consequences of attachment in this world. And then the third and final reason Srila Prabhupada gives for the Lord's suffering is actually the real reason, the internal reason. That Lord Ramachandra, in this separation from Mother Sita, he is experiencing viraha bhakti, love in separation from his devotees, and allowing his devotees also to experience love in separation, this vipralamba bhav. The highest form of bhakti, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, is not love in union, but love in separation, because the intensity of bhakti that emerges when the Lord is not apparently present, not physically visible to the devotee, that intensity cannot be matched by any other form. And in fact, if we see the Ramayana in this perspective, we find that every relationship that Lord Ramachandra is experiencing is flavored with this viraha bhav, this love and separation. Every relationship that he's experienced, almost. Of course, his relationship with Mother Sita. He spends so much time away from her, more time away from her than he does with her. And she does as well. So there's that mood of that love and absence in separation. But then his relationship with Bharat also is marked by that love and separation. His relationship with his mother and father is marked with that viraha bhakti, right? Dashrath Maharaj leaves his body as a result of separation. His relationship with Hanumanji even. Yes, Hanumanji sees the Lord, but he spends a whole lifetime waiting to see Lord Ramachandra, isn't it? Think about Shabari. Shabari spends, I forget what it is, I think it's 1,000 years waiting upon the instructions of her guru. She waits that one day the Lord will come, and she never gives up hope. But she sees the Lord just for a few brief moments and then departs this world after having his darshan. Right? So Sundar Rupa Prabhu, muting yourself, please.
Stones can break my bones on this camera.
Thank you. So every relationship is marked, is imbued with that flavor of viraha bhakti. And if you read Srimad Bhagavatam's account of the Ramayana in the 9th canto, it's very short, right? Just 2 chapters. The entire Ramayana is done. Really, in 1 chapter, the main story is told. But the occasions, the times that Shukadev Goswami stops to describe and relish the story are the moments of separation or the moments of reunion after separation. He spends so much time, for example, describing Lord Ramachandra's return to Ayodhya and the joy of the people of Ayodhya at seeing the Lord, like their life had returned to them after so many years of separation. So the whole focus is on this viraha. This is what Shukadev Goswami is relishing. This is what Parikshit Maharaj is relishing. This is what Lord Ramachandra and Mother Sita are relishing. And it is to show what is this Vipralamba Bhav, what is this Viraha Bhakti, and to experience it himself, that the Lord takes on this apparent suffering. Now, the question so this is the third reason, okay? And this third reason is specifically for the devotees. It is something that cannot be understood by the average crowd, right? So 3 different reasons the Lord is doing at the same time for 3 different audiences. He's teaching how to practice dharma even when it's difficult for your average audience. He's teaching us how to be renounced from this world, the consequences of attachment, for those who are looking for liberation, the vairagis, the sannyasis, the mokshakamis, for those on the path of nivritti. And he's teaching what is actual bhakti for those who are actually devotees and can relish that viraha bhakti. Same lila, 3 different purposes for 3 different audiences at the same time. One of Krishna's qualities, his special qualities, is he's daksha. He's very expert in everything he does. And Krishna is the supreme multitasker. He never does anything for one purpose. He always does 100 things at once, which is just one thing, right? He accomplishes so many different tasks. So here also, he's demonstrating his expertise and sending out 3 different messages. And a person will hear the message that they are ready for, that will most benefit them. And none of the messages contradict each other. The fact that we have to do our duty is not contradictory to the fact that we have to renounce attachment, as Krishna says very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita. right? Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnirna chakriya. 6th chapter, he says that we can be a sannyasi and do your dharma in this world at the same time. And certainly experiencing viraha bhakti is not contradictory to the other two, right? So all three are different for different audiences, and they are simultaneously true, not contradictory at all. And all three are beautifully described by Srila Prabhupada in his purport to Canto 5, Chapter 19, text number 5, which I encourage you again to read those prayers by Hanumanji and Srila Prabhupada's purports on those prayers. Now, okay, so the Lord suffers for these three reasons in the Ramayana. This is the messages he wants to give. But the next question that I want to raise is, does he actually suffer? How is it possible that he suffers? If he is God, which he is, Bhagavan Rama, this verse describes, he's the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada, in another purport in 9th chapter, 9th canto, he describes that between Lord Ram and Krishna, there is no difference. But they both are the Supreme Personality of God. Krishna's original, but there is no, Lord Ramachandra is not less in any way, it says. So he is Bhagavan Rama, Ishvara. So, and the very definition of Bhagavan is someone who is Satchidananda, always full of joy and happiness. Ananda. Ananda mayo bhyasat, the Vedanta Sutra says. Anandam Brahma, the Upanishads say. The very nature of Brahman is Ananda. So Hanumanji raises the question, how is it even possible that Ananda Swarup, the very personification of bliss, is suffering? Does the Lord actually suffer? The answer to that question is yes and no. Yes and no because of this reason. On the one hand, the answer is yes. First of all, let me explain why it's yes. We understand from the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas that the very nature of God is that he is the embodiment of all rasa, akhila rasamrita murti. He is the embodiment of rasa, and rasa means relationships. The intense emotions that arise from relationships, that is rasa. And the Lord is the fountainhead, the embodiment of all rasas. Right? Dasya, Vatsalya, Sakya, Madhuri, all of them. And the Lord relishes these relationships with his devotees who have one or more relationships with him. Okay? So this is the very nature of who God is. He is an impersonal energy, but that is a partial aspect of it. He is the king and the master of everything, the creator, but that is also a partial understanding of him. Ultimately, supremely, he is the Lord of all relationships. Now, in order to have a relationship with anyone or anything, what is required? The most important thing that allows a relationship to be possible is the ability to be vulnerable. When we open ourselves up to someone in a relationship, say a relationship between husband and wife, or between two childhood friends, the characteristic of that relationship, what makes it actually a genuine relationship, is you open yourself up to that person. And that opening up allows that person to give you happiness because you make yourself open, you make yourself vulnerable to them. They can see who you actually are. Your weaknesses, your strengths, your shortcomings. And you not only open yourself up to joy, to happiness that they may give you, but you're also taking the risk that they will give you suffering. Why is it the case that the pain given to us by a family member is so much greater than the pain we get from an outsider? Why? Because we don't make ourselves vulnerable to the outsider. It's a superficial relationship. But when we open ourselves up to someone who is close to us, then we also open up the possibility that they will hurt us, that they will scare us, frighten us in some way, that they will love us, that they will reassure us, that they will give us joy. The good and the bad, everything we open ourselves up to. So when Krishna is Akhila Rasamrita Murti, it means that he opens himself up to his devotees. He makes himself vulnerable to his devotees. And that is what gives the possibility of joy, of a real relationship, of rasa, of that intense emotion. That is what makes it possible, because Krishna opens himself up to that devotee. He risks himself. This is why Krishna gives moksha very easily. He gives bhoga, material enjoyment very easily. But he rarely gives bhakti. Because to give bhakti, he has to trust that person, that they will not misuse the fact that I'm opening myself up. That opening him up means that he becomes the property of the devotee. Ajita jitopyasi taistri lokyam. He becomes conquered by that devotee. It means that if that devotee chooses to run behind him with a stick, Krishna is going to be afraid. He's going to cry. And he might even get tied up to a grinding mortar. That's the risk that Krishna takes when he engages in rasa, his relationship with his devotees. That Srimati Radharani may break his heart also. That Mother Yashoda may frighten him or chastise him in some way. So yes, Krishna does suffer. Lord Ramachandra does suffer when something happens that separates him from his devotees, or his devotee gets upset with him, or he's not able to do something that he wants to. The answer is yes, the Lord is a person and he is in relationship. And with any relationship, you're going to have the ups and the downs. Right? Gopi bhava rasamritabdi lahari kallola magno muhur. Why is it called lahari kallola? What is the characteristic of a wave? It goes up and it goes down. It goes up and it goes down. Sometimes the Goswamis are crying, and sometimes they are dancing in joy. And Krishna is the same way. Sometimes he's dancing with the gopis, sometimes he is crying in separation. When he goes to Dwarka, then his heart is breaking in separation from the Brajavasis. So the first answer to the question, does Krishna suffer? Does Lord Ram suffer? The first answer is yes, he does. But the second answer is no, he does not. What does that mean? Well, the suffering that the Lord experiences is not the same type of suffering that we experience in our relationships in this world. Every relationship in this world has a dark side to it. That dark side exists because of qualities like envy and lust and anger and greed and jealousy and all of those things. But that dark side does not exist in our relationships, in relationships in the spiritual world, in relationships with Krishna. Specifically, Srila Prabhupada explains, I think it's at least 3 different purports connected to Lord Ramachandra. Srila Prabhupada explains this point again and again, that the suffering that Lord Ramachandra goes through looks similar to our suffering in this world, but in quality, it is something very different. And he gives multiple examples. Shastra gives multiple examples to describe this point. He says this suffering, this is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Mahaprabhu's conversation with Ramananda Rai. Prabhupada explains that this suffering is like drinking hot sugarcane juice. Sugarcane juice is drunk hot temperature. And when it's drunk like that, it can sometimes burn the mouth, right? It's so hot. And yet, because it's so sweet, you cannot stop drinking it. Right? So you're suffering also from the heat, but you're also enjoying the sweetness. And it's one and the other and one and the other. Another example that Chaitanya Charitamrita gives is that it is like poison mixed with nectar. The nectar makes you immortal, it makes you healthy, and it's delicious. And the poison is bitter and it's killing you, right? So how is this even possible, right? The point being that the experience, so Prabhupada, he concludes by saying that the viraha bhav, that suffering in separation, is actually transcendental bliss. The suffering in separation is actually transcendental bliss. Now, from that, we might end up concluding, oh, so there's only happiness in the spiritual world. Actually, viraha is nothing more than union. It's separation from Krishna is just the same as playing with him. And the answer is no. Prabhupada says the full variety of emotions is there in the spiritual world. So suffering is actually suffering. And union is actually union. And joy is actually joy. And missing someone is actually missing them. But it's not like it is in the material world. The foundation of that suffering is still joy. And so the only way to describe it, another example Prabhupada gives, is like it's like hot chutney. A chutney that is too hot to eat and too sweet to resist. Right? So you can't stop eating it because it's so sweet, but you can't actually eat it because it's so hot. This is an experience that maybe we all have had at some point, right? The poison and nectar one, not so much. But this one, I think we can appreciate. So does the Lord suffer? The answer is yes, because this mood of separation is there in the spiritual world. All the emotions are there. It is not that suffering is bliss, and therefore there's no difference between when Krishna leaves and when Krishna is present, when the devotees are missing him and when they're with him. There's no difference. No, that would be Mayavad. Right? There is a difference. There's variety in the spiritual world. All those emotions are there, but it's not like the emotions in the material world. Right? And so the best way to say it is that this viraha bhav, viraha bhakti, is irresistibly painful. It's miserably joyful. Right? It's a contradiction that we cannot grasp until we've tasted it ourselves. We have to take, you see the Bhagavatam, the Acharyas, struggle to describe it in language that us normal human beings can understand. And so the best they can do is to say, it is poison mixed with nectar. It is the thing that you live for, and it will kill you at the same time. So this mix, this miserably joyful mix, this irresistibly painful mix, is so delicious that the Lord comes down specifically an entire avatar as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just to relish it. He comes just to relish this. It is so good. Of course, he relishes it from the side of the Lord in the form of Lord Rama and Krishna and so many other avatars. But he wants to relish it from the other side also. And so he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the form of his devotee. just to relish this kind of nectarian poison. And in fact, there's some very interesting similarities that Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita make between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's descent and Lord Ramachandra. The two look so different in their lila and their activities, but in fact, there's a couple of points that are very similar that resonate with each other very strongly that Bhagavatam describes. It's actually a fascinating comparison to study Srimad Bhagavatam and to study Chaitanya Charitamrita, to see the connections between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Ramachandra. From what I can tell, there are two major areas that are emphasized in terms of their connection, in terms of the similarities. The first is renunciation. That famous verse in Canto 11, chapter 5, it begins, Tyaktva sudustyaja surepsita rajya lakshmi. This one verse which describes Lord Krishna, Lord Ramachandra, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all at the same time. And the quality that is highlighted in the first line of that verse is the fact that both Lord Ramachandra and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were able to walk away from the greatest opulence that someone could want. Lord Ramachandra famously left Rajya Lakshmi, all the opulence of a kingdom, in a moment's notice. One night, he just in the space of 24 hours, he detached himself immediately. And Hanumanji in 5th canto, he makes this point that Lord Ramachandra is completely detached from everything in this world. That he has no need, no attachment, despite the fact that the whole Ramayana is a story of Lord Ramachandra running after Mother Sita to find her. In fact, the Lord is completely detached from everything. He's renounced. At a moment's notice, he's able to walk away, give up everything. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed the same opulence of Vairagya. One of the 6 opulences of Bhagavan, right, is Vairagya. He displayed the same Vairagya when he left home at the young, beautiful age of 24. He left his beautiful wife, who was Lakshmi Devi herself, a loving mother, so affectionate and kind and loving she was. And all the household happiness a man could desire, the Lord walked away from all of that. Dayataya, out of compassion for the living entities, right? So this is one point where Lord Ramachandra and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are compared as being very similar. And then the other one that is drawn out is the Lord's compassion towards all living entities. When Hanumanji praises the Lord in 5th canto, he says, how merciful is my Lord Ramachandra, that he is willing to take even subhuman creatures like me, monkeys, and make them his friends. He says, one cannot have friendship with Lord Ramachandra on the basis of a lot of learning or money or position or power or good birth. None of these will qualify you to be Lord Ramachandra's friend. You know, Hanumanji is Lord Ram's ideal servant, but also there's the mood of friendship there as well, where Lord Ramachandra relies upon Hanuman to help him in times of difficulty. And definitely with Sugriv. Sugriv is Lord Ramachandra's friend. So he's saying that you cannot make this friendship. Hanumanji is saying, I'm telling you from experience. You cannot be Lord Ram's friend on the basis of any of these qualities. Because look, we monkeys have none of these qualities. Of course, he's speaking out of humility. Hanumanji is very learned and very powerful. But he's speaking out of humility, that look at us, we're monkeys. Monkeys have no good qualities. We're not even human beings. And yet, Lord Ramachandra made us friends. Why? Because he is compassionate. To anyone and everyone, he does not see the physical form, the shape in which they come. He sees only the quality of their heart. And this same quality of compassion to everyone, despite their background, is demonstrated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu throughout his Leela, where he refuses to kill sinners, but insists upon liberating them. Where he takes service even from the most fallen and gives them the highest gift of Krishna Prem. Dayataya ipsita. He is running after them out of compassion. He's running after the living entities. Bhagavatam says, just like Lord Ramachandra ran after that deer. He's running after us, saying, please stop. Engage in the service of the Lord. This is what is going to make you happy. Your attachments in this world, that doesn't make you happy. But bhakti will. So that compassion, in fact, it's really interesting because in those prayers of Hanumanji in the 5th canto, the prayer is speaking about Lord Ramachandra, and Prabhupada is remembering in the purport Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's speaking about Lord Ram also, but it's striking actually, because normally we think of a connection between Krishna and Mahaprabhu. That is a connection that is not difficult to make for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, because Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Radha and Krishna. He's Krishna himself in the mood of Radharani. But the connection between Mahaprabhu and Lord Ramachandra is not one that we think about very often. And yet, as Hanumanji is praising Lord Ram, Prabhupada is remembering Mahaprabhu in the purport. So these two qualities especially. The Bhagavatam, when it describes Lord Ramachandra, the Bhagavatam emphasizes these two qualities over and over again. Lord Ramachandra's renunciation and his message to all of us that we too should walk the path of detachment in this world. Number one. And number two, Lord Ramachandra's compassion, his mercy, his willingness to ignore every material disqualification when a person is wanting to serve him. They be a monkey or a squirrel or even a vulture. Lord Ramachandra will accept their service and make such people his own. Vibhishan was a demon, and Lord Ramachandra guaranteed him protection for his entire life. Jatayu was the most disliked of birds, a vulture, and Lord Ramachandra became his son and did his Antyeshti Samskar, his final rites. Hanumanji and Sugriv are monkeys, and Lord Ramachandra took a vow of friendship, made them his friends. He treated Sugriv like an equal. This is the compassion of the Lord, his mercy. And Bhagavatam emphasizes this quality again and again, along with the Lord's detachment. So this is what I wanted to present to you for your consideration today, is this particular question, is why does the Lord suffer? And does he actually suffer? And hopefully you've gathered from this description that why the Lord suffers, there's 3 wonderful reasons that Srila Prabhupada gives. He's coming to teach 3 different things. And does he actually suffer? And the answer to that is a very inconceivable yes and no. So I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Radhika Raman Prabhu, for a wonderful, different view of presenting this and enlightening us, giving us some reflections and some lessons to take it Dharma in difficulties, attachment, bringing suffering, proportionate. I just remembered when you mentioned about bringing the Srimad Radharani to Lakshmi Devi to connecting to Durga Devi when we don't use it in the service. You mentioned the shadow. I remembered Sri Prabhupada mentioning in Nigeria, strongly discussing about especially Durga Devi, about the three prongs of three difficulties, Adi Daivika, Adi Bhautika, Adi Atmika. Because in Uganda, same thing happened. They threw all the Indians out somehow. So Nigeria, same situation is about to happen. And Sri Prabhupada strongly condemned the worship of demigods. He presented very strongly. So I just remembered this shadow, how when we don't take it in a right situation, right way, then it becomes a difficulty. Thank you. Amritan, go ahead. Your question.
On this point, Prabhu, I just mentioned, yes. Brahma Samhita mentions the same thing.
Yes.
Shishti, Sthiti, Pralaya Sadhana, Shakti Rekha. So here the three prongs are Shishti, Sthiti, and Pralaya. Creation, maintenance, and destruction. Chayeva Yasya Bhavanani Vibharti Durga. So she's the Chaya, the shadow. Thank you, Prabhu, for that nice comment.
Amritan, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisance, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for nice realization and a different way of looking at this. Prabhu, you made the comparison of Mahaprabhu and Lord Ramachandra, and I'm trying to understand the compassion part. So they don't see what your background is, qualification or disqualification, and they accept you. And Mahaprabhu, I think, goes one step further and gives you love of God. He just distributes it. And earlier you mentioned, Prabhu, about that vulnerability. That's why Krishna doesn't give it. So how do we understand this? That means compassion and mercy. He makes himself vulnerable and he's willing to do that for us. Is that the correct way of, because Krishna doesn't give bhakti on one end, but Mahaprabhu is giving you bhakti.
Yeah. No, Krishna gives bhakti. No doubt he gives bhakti. But yes, Mahaprabhu gives it much more freely. This is why Namo Mahavadanyaya. He's the most merciful form of Lord Krishna. And so Krishna is merciful, especially in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna gives bhakti, particularly in the form of Mahaprabhu. But yes, this is his quality, as you're describing. This word is very nice for compassion. I like it very much. It's called anukampa in Sanskrit. Is tesham eva anukampartam aham ajnanajam tama nashayam yatma bhavasto jnana dipena bhasvata. Krishna says in 10th chapter of Gita that he uses this word anukampa and to describe his mercy. And the word anukampa, kampa means to tremble, to shake, kampate, right? To tremble, and anu means with, or alongside, or after. So to tremble with someone, to tremble after someone, means to experience what they are experiencing, right? And so in this way, Krishna, this is anukampa means vulnerability, right? When you feel compassion for someone, what is it that you're feeling? You're feeling their pain. Now, you're not actually feeling the pain, as in if you see someone has hurt their leg and that person is dear to you, then you're going to feel their pain, yes? Now, your leg is not paining, so not directly you're feeling it, but you're trembling with them. Their pain becomes your pain. So this is the characteristic of mercy in general. Is vulnerability. When you're merciful to someone, you open yourself up to feeling their pain. And this is why also in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, when he's describing austerities in different modes, he says, austerity in the mode of ignorance is that which torments the body and also the super soul within. So he's saying that unnecessary austerity is also giving trouble to the super soul because he's with you, he's compassionate. He's trembling with you, right? This is exactly the same word in English. Come means with, passion means to feel pain. to feel pain with someone is mercy. Anukampa, same word, right? Same idea, basically.
So Prabhuji is, I don't know if the word is correct, I'm using the right word, favoritism. Then one would tend to tilt towards Lord Chaitanya as his Ishtadev or worshipable Lord as compared to Krishna. Because here he's just giving you something which is that
On one level, yes, we do tilt towards Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he is Yuga Avatar. He is the one to worship for this age. Right? He is our worshipable deity because he is giving the path out of Kali Yuga. Right? He has come specifically to liberate us. Not people in Satyug, not people in Treta. He's come for us.
Yeah.
So in that way, yes, he is our Ishtadev. But there's no comparison with Krishna because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, right? Krishna Swarupam. So how can you favor Mahaprabhu over Krishna? It's not possible. It's Krishna just in a different mood. That's all, right? So on one level, the answer to your question is yes. On another level, no, right? Both is true. It depends on the mood of the devotee, isn't it?
Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your nice questions. Let's see. Someone has their hands up. Harshal, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So, I have a small question. So, like, in the Rama Leela, like Surpanaka, she wanted Krishna, not Rama. Sorry, she wanted Rama. I mean, like Rama. So she wanted Rama. So, but in the Krishna Leela, like, Putana, she wanted to kill Rama, but she wanted to kill Krishna, but Krishna gave Putana liberation. But Surpanaka, Rama didn't give Surpanaka liberation. Like, how can we? Like, how? Like.
Yes. So I see what your question is. So what was Shurpanaka's ultimate destination after death? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Perhaps others in the call may know, but I don't know that detail. What I do know is that anytime someone approaches the Lord, even out of hatred, then they are going to be benefited, right? And they are going to be purified, and they will leave in a better condition spiritually than when they first met the Lord. Now, physically speaking, okay, her nose was cut off, and so she left in a worse condition. But just by contacting the Lord and having that experience with Lakshman, right, she is purified of her sinful reactions. She learns a very important lesson. And anyone who contacts the Lord, Bhagavatam says, even in the mood of hatred, that person is not doing bhakti, because bhakti has to be favorably performed, but that person is nevertheless purified and benefited as a result of their contact with Krishna. And so that's one point. The other point is that this is something very special about, you compared Krishna with Lord Ramachandra. So this is something very important to note, that this is one difference between Lord Krishna and Lord Ram. This is why Krishna is known as the Purna Purushottam. He's the supreme personality of Godhead. He's the full manifestation, Akhila Rasamrita Murti, of all rasas, the embodiment of all rasas, Murti, the form. Why? Because he is able to accept people in a variety of different moods and engage with them accordingly, right? So Lord Ramachandra, there were many ladies in the forest in Ayodhya who were attracted to Lord Ram. But the Lord had, because he was following the path of dharma and showing the ideal example, he was Eka Patni Vrata. He had taken a vow to have one wife only throughout his life, and he maintained that strictly. And Prabhupada says he's setting an example for all of us, that one husband, one wife, that's it. Right? But when Krishna came, he was able to fulfill everyone's desire. Even Kubja, who came to Krishna purely in lust initially. Initially, she was not approaching Krishna like the gopis with pure bhakti to satisfy Krishna's senses. No, she wanted to satisfy her senses. Krishna was a beautiful young man and she was attracted to him. And Krishna says, why not? Right? I will satisfy your desire and also purify you in the process. Krishna accepted Putana's service, even though she didn't come in the mood of a servant, and made her mother in the spiritual world. Right? So this is why Krishna shows us the full personification, the full manifestation, all aspects of the Supreme Lord is seen in the form of Krishna. And this is why he is the original personality of Godhead, the source of all other avatars. Because other avatars will show one aspect of Bhagavan or another aspect. But Krishna is like the full moon. He shows all aspects, the entire picture is there, right? So there is a difference between Lord Krishna and Lord Ramachandra. But we can rest assured that even someone like Shupnaka, even someone like Ravan, everyone is going to be benefited upon encountering the Lord, right? Upon coming to the Lord in any mood whatsoever. Lord Ramachandra is benefiting not just his devotees, but even his adversaries, even the demons. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments anyone has?
Madhupati Prabhu, Devakinanda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Radhika Raman Prabhu, thank you very much for enlivening us with this wonderful presentation of Lord Ramachandra's pastimes. One question I had was, began your topic with the look at, does Lord suffer? And in your presentation, you said yes and no, right? And on one hand, we see Lord Rama, the name itself means the supreme enjoyer, right? Yeah. That's where kind of feel that how in the past times of Lord Ramachandra, that, and as you very rightly mentioned, that the supreme enjoyer part of his pastimes are kind of, they are there, but they are not highlighted that much as the sorrow part or the suffering part of his pastimes. Right. So, and that's where, kind of, even when we see the pastime of the Lord sending Mother Sita to the forest. Right. On one hand, he's doing the dharma of a king, which is higher, dharma, than his than of an husband. But then we see that is that kind of question that his wife being pregnant and then sending in the forest and leaving her there. It kind of even as a citizen, she would have had a right. Where she has been kidnapped by Ravan, but I just trying to understand that particular pastime of the Lord, kind of banishing Mother Sita to the forest.
Yes. So first of all, on your earlier comment about the name Rama, I appreciate that very much. I think it's a very valuable point. The word Ram, the root Ram, Ramate iti Rama, he who enjoys, is Rama, and Ramayati iti Ramaha. He who gives others enjoyment, that is Rama. Right? So he who enjoys and who causes others to enjoy. So really, if we want to understand how is Lord Ram enjoyer, we have to understand this point of viraha. Right? How love and separation is actually transcendentally blissful. At that point, we have to understand. Otherwise, just reading the story, one would be confused. Why is he called Rama? Isn't it? And so I think this is a nice point you make. That this is why it's so important. Ultimately, the true meaning of Rama, of the word Rama, can only be understood by a devotee in the context of Virama. It cannot be understood otherwise. Now, in terms of your second point, this is a topic of quite a bit of discussion. I gave one seminar on this topic called "In Defense of Lord Ram," and it's on ISKCON Tawako's YouTube channel. This is many years ago, in which I systematically went through each of the episodes in the Ramayana that are criticized by people today, and discussed why and what is their meaning and everything. But here I'll just answer in very brief, so that I think there's another question also that came up. So the main thing I want to mention, I think you also hinted on this, is that the first thing we have to recognize that Lord Ramachandra is demonstrating through his Leela that it is impossible to practice dharma perfectly in this world. And the reason for that is because dharmas always conflict with each other. This is the nature of dharma, that it is conflicting. One's dharma in one direction will conflict with a dharma in another direction. And in such a situation, we have to make a choice. Whose dharma, which dharma should we choose? If you think of the Mahabharata, this happens all the time, right? Where the Pandavas are torn between one dharma is to behave like this and the other dharma is to behave like this. And sometimes they choose the right one and sometimes they choose the wrong one, or it's not clear whether they chose the right one. Just like when the episode of Draupadi is happening, right? The game of dice. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is trying to follow the dharma of what? A servant, of a slave, that he's been gambled off. He does not even own himself. His brothers don't, so they have to remain quiet. They cannot speak up. They cannot do anything because they're slaves. But on the other hand, he has a dharma as a husband, right? And in that case, Draupadi makes it clear throughout the Mahabharata that you made the wrong choice, right? Bhishma made the wrong choice. And Dronacharya made the wrong choice. That they were being faithful to their duties towards the king when they should have been helpful this way, right? So the point being that dharmas always conflict. The Shastras show us this again and again and again. And in the case of the Ramayana, the major conflict here is between his dharma as a king and his dharma as a husband. And Lord Ramachandra is very well aware that he is failing in his dharma as a husband, in preference of his dharma as a king. He is aware of this in Valmiki Ramayana. He says multiple times that I know in my heart that Sita is innocent. He asks forgiveness at the end when Sita Devi is present and Valmiki is there. Valmiki brings Sita Devi and he says, please, I have to beg forgiveness for my cruel treatment of Mother Sita, of Sita, and Lakshman, when he's taking Sita to the forest, he tells Lord Ramachandra, he says, this act will lead to your infamy. Your fame will be destroyed. And it is a fact today, no? Lakshman's words have come true, that Lord Ramachandra is criticized specifically for this point and for Agni Pariksha. It has given him infamy as a result of this, for those who don't understand why the Lord does what he does. Sita Devi tells him in Agni Pariksha, she speaks very strongly towards him. You know, in the Agni Pariksha, the mood is the same. Basically, the issue is the same, right? Dashrath speaks strongly to him. Lakshman is very angry. Even the monkeys are heartbroken. Sita Devi, for the first and only time in her life, she speaks very strongly towards Lord Ramachandra and says, "You are acting like a low-class man," she says directly. These are her words. Right? So the point is, it's very clear to Lord Ramachandra himself and to everyone who's watching that he is not fulfilling his obligations as a husband. So I think it is pointless to try to justify that when the fact is that the Lord himself knows it and says it. But what is the point? That Lord Ramachandra is not a citizen. Sita Devi is not a citizen. You are right in that even a citizen would have better rights. But as king and queen, the way a monarchy works, not a democracy, a monarchy, the way a monarchy works, a king and queen are not citizens. They are above the law. And while that may sound like a very great position to be in, it's actually a very difficult position for the dharmic king, for one who is a Rajarshi. For an exploitative king, okay, it's a different matter. But if you want to be a Rajarshi, then it means that you have no personal life, you have no personal rights. That's setting the ideal example for the citizens and keeping the citizens happy. You have to do at all costs. And Lord Ramachandra basically lives out the next 13,000 years in grief. Ramayana describes this very clearly. In grief, he destroys his own happiness as a result of what he has to do. And Mother Sita, of course, also. But Sita Devi is she also understands what is happening. She understands. I mean, it's painful and difficult for both of them, and especially for her. But you know, when Lakshman leaves her, she understands immediately what is happening. And she sends a message back to Rama, which is heartbreaking and also shows the great strength of her character. She tells Lakshman, "Please go back and deliver this, my final message, to my husband. Please do your duty as an ideal king and treat the citizens like your own brothers," she says. The way you treat Lakshman and Bharat, you treat your citizens like that. Keep them happy and peaceful in all respects. Why is she giving that message? Because she knows why this is happening and what the reasons are behind it. Right? And then Lord Ramachandra does exactly the same thing with Lakshman as well. To keep his Raja Dharma, his duty as a king, to keep his word, he exiles Lakshman as well. And when Lakshman has to leave, then things are intolerable for the Lord. The separation becomes so great for him that he leaves this world himself. Right? Just like in his final years at Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Gambhira, the intensity of viraha became so much that then it becomes impossible to maintain the body. So then Lord Ramachandra, he could not then continue his pastimes in the mature world. And it was time to wrap up. Right? So it's a very, very deep subject matter. And the only thing I want to mention is that sometimes people see Lord Ram as some kind of a heartless guy who was so concerned about his own position as a king that he was willing to sacrifice everyone. We know many kings like this, right? Who destroy their family members for their own position. People who say that, say it only because they have not actually read the Ramayana. They have seen movies, they have heard stories, but they have not read the Ramayana. In the Ramayana, you find Lord Ramachandra is the softest man you will ever find. Really. I mean, his model of who an ideal ideal man, every step of the way he's regretful. Every step of the way he's regretful for what he is doing. Right? So Lord Ramachandra's character is not one of that macho man who's willing to just sacrifice everything to keep his position. Far from the truth. Every step of the way he is struggling with how to do his duties. And in the end, he shows us that in this material world, no matter how hard you try, you will fail in your dharma somewhere. Right? And that's why the material world is a zero-sum game. That's why the material world is ultimately a futile pursuit. Because even the ideal man cannot do all his duties in an ideal way. He will have to choose. And Prabhupada explains in a letter to Satsvarup Maharaj, he says, in Lord Ramachandra's story, the dominant goal was to show the duties of a king. And that's why he did that at every other cost. In Krishna's Leela, this was not the case. Right? He did not put Raja Dharma before everything else. Quite to the contrary, Krishna was willing to break the rules of a king. He was willing to lie and to have others lie, to break their word, because he put greater priority on other things. Right? So it's not that the Lord is like this in all his forms, but in his form as Lord Ramachandra, he wants to show what it means to be a king. And for that, we have to be grateful. Sorry, it was a complex question.
Thank you very much, Oji.
Yes.
Raman Prabhu, you want to say something?
Oh, thank you so much, Radhika Raman Prabhu. We are blessed to have your association. Such a sweet. I was listening to Shubhalas Prabhu. I don't know where he died, but he mentioned Lord Rama as he built a bridge over the ocean. But Shubhalas Prabhu was mentioning Lord Ram is a bridge in himself. He actually, when it was time to build the bridge, and he asked Bhavishan and Lakshman, what do you think? What should we do? So Bhavishan said, Lord Ram, your Samundar, Sagar is your guru, because you come from Ikshvaku dynasty of Sagar Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
So because you come from Sagar Maharaj, he's your guru, so you just pray to ocean and ocean will dry up and you can cross. So he said, oh, Bhavishan, that's very nice. But then Lakshman hears this. Lakshman said, hold on, Ram, you don't have to pray. You actually pick up the bow and you can dry the ocean. So now these amazing, wonderful devotees of Lord Ram, they had two different ways to look at the same situation, how to dry the ocean so they can cross. So it's explained that Lord Ram, he did not take one over another. He said yes to Bhavishan, he said yes to Lakshman. He paused and then he said, Bhavishan, we will try your idea first for 3 days. I will pray to Sagar Samundar for 3 days. And if he doesn't dry up, then Lakshman, we will use your idea to pick up the bow. So he built bridges in between the mentality of Bhavishan and mentality of Lakshman. So the story continues beautifully, but I was just remembering hearing your point that Lord Ram, to me, to my heart, he gives joy because he's Rama, he's giving pleasure by hearing how he built bridges amongst hundreds of people who came in contact with him, either between Kakai and Dashrath Maharaj or Bharat Maharaj. He built bridges. He never ever get the bridge break. Tried his best. Yes, in Sita's case, there's some bricks fell, but So that particular part, that how he tried to build bridges, gives tremendous amount of joy to your heart, which I sometimes don't find in Krishna Lila, but here in Ram Lila, it's that nourishment. So just wanted to share.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. It's so nice to see you, Devakinanda Prabhu. And thank you for that wonderful comment. Actually, in the mood of Lord Ramachandra, we followers of Srila Prabhupada are all bridge builders also. We're assisting this bridge building. Like Prabhupada said, his mission was to return Sita to Lord Ramachandra, isn't it? That Sita Devi means Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is there all over the world, but especially in the West. And his goal was to bring Mother Sita back to Ram, means to use that Lakshmi in the service of Krishna. And he said, this is my mission. And in fact, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he mentioned to Prabhupada, I forget what the story is exactly, but he said that, Prabhupada, we are all your monkeys in this work. And Prabhupada said, yes, that is true. So the point is that all of us are in the same business, right? We're all civil engineers for the service of Srila Prabhupada. Our job is to build bridges. Our job is to assist Hanumanji in bringing that message of Lord Ramachandra to every lost living entity in this world. So Lord Ramachandra, you're right. He made so many bridges, also between human beings and animals. Yes, this Sita Devi specifically tells Hanuman when she meets him first, she doesn't believe him. But then when she sees him, she understands him. She asks, how is it possible that there's cooperation between men and monkeys? This is one of her first questions to Hanuman. How has this come about that there's cooperation between two species that never work together, between men and monkeys? So this is a wonderful point that Lord Ramachandra is building bridges in all different places, in all different directions. And we can also serve him in that same mood. Right? We too are bridge builders. We're assistants on the team to help Srila Prabhupada build this bridge across the oceans to bring every living entity to the shelter of Lord Ramachandra. So I think that's a very nice point to end today's discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you all so much for your attention, for your nice questions and comments, and for giving me this opportunity to relish Ram Leela with all of you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. We would like to invite you again, probably in next few months, for again another class. And, please accept my respectful obeisance again. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya Thank you, Prabhu.
Radhika, Raman, Prabhu, whenever you are available for a seminar or something, please let us know. We'd like to invite you to hear more from you.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, that would be my good fortune to have your association more. Thank you so much, Madhuvati Prabhu.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rudescha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you very much.
Terrible to Prabhu will have quick announcements after that. Okay, quick announcements. Upcoming big festival, major festival is May 25th. Tuesday is Narsingha Chaturdasi, appearance of Lord Narsingha, fasting till dusk. Then Ekadasi preparations. Then we will have Narsingha Yajna, we'll let you know.